Okay, we'll try it again. Thank you. Sorry for the confusion. I normally have my techie people doing this, and I'm at the techie location today. Miss Mary's more techie than me, so she's got us going, which is where we need to be for today. So Stuart, welcome. And Ethan, welcome. Okay.
Thank you.
I want to touch base with a couple of you that are new that weren't here last time, just so that you understand we're doing Money Mastery Life Group, and it is a life group. So we accept questions. Sarah helps us on that end, and she'll do some chatting with you and stuff like that from where she's at, because that enables us to be able to communicate as we go along. So if you have a question, if you'll just put it in there, and we'll know kind of what's going on, and we'll try to address questions as we go today. What I do want to try to do, since I've held this life group, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 times around the different victories, and everybody occasionally gets to a place, everybody gets to a place in life that they go, oh, I have questions, who do I ask? And so I'm not saying that I'm the 101 answer man, but I do have a lot of experience with finances and things. And so I'm glad to host the life group. And I'm so excited that you can ask questions. And I just want you to know, just like Pastor Jacob, he doesn't say he knows everything, but if you ask him a question he doesn't know, he'll go find out, and I'll do exactly the same thing. So we did have some questions sent in on homework, and I appreciate that. If you haven't had the chance to send in your questions by email or had trouble with email, Sarah put in the chat today her other email on the Gmail, and you can resubmit your questions. I'm going to touch base on a few of the questions before we finish up tonight, just to kind of get some of those answered right away, because they're simple things to answer. I'm not saying you have simple questions, I just happen to know the answer. So I do want to share that while we're dealing with that today. But what we're going to talk about is we're doing the Money Masteries. For those of you that haven't been in this is the book, Billy Epperhart, Money Mastery, and it's available on Amazon. As my understanding at the store, Miss Mary says, and she's willing to take orders if you want to do that. I'm not sure that I understand how she does the PayPal thing, but if you do that on chat, Dr. Morrison will help you work that out as well. But she can order the books at 50% off through Harris Bible College because Pastor Billy Epperhart makes that available to her, and she's welcome to pass that discount on to you. So tonight we're just going to kind of dig into the first part of the book. Last time we had a little bit of a introductory. I know Stuart was out of town and Ethan's new in here tonight, but we're basically going to touch base on just a whole bunch of different things that deal with money. And we did talk about last time, you know, Jesus talked about money more than any other subject in the Bible. People don't realize how often he talked about it, but it's mainly because money matters, and money matters in everything that we do every single day. Money tells people what to do and tells people what not to do. And our goal today, I was listening to Leanne Tomlinson. She does one of our DE life groups on Sunday afternoons. And she gave a story that she personally, and I know she won't mind me sharing this, but she just trying to get out of that poverty mentality. And I know Redonda feels that. I feel that living in Hugo. Everybody there just draws a check. They don't want to work. The house is falling apart. The car don't work. And they just don't see a way to get out of the situation that they're in by themselves. So they're always looking for the government to do a bailout or a check or whatever. And you and I both know that's not the kingdom principle. You know, we're supposed to do what Jacob taught this morning at Life Group or church. He talked about that we're to be a disciple is to be imitators of Christ. And so our goal is to be face to face. You've heard him preach on that before. And our goal is to be walking every day just as he was, because he is in us. He's our hope of glory. And so we have to be at the place where our lives are an example to other people. And the only way we can do that is be successful in all areas of our life, including finances. And I'm not talking about some prosperity gospel thing. I just think people need to be at a place where they have freedom to master the money that comes to them. Because you've heard, Pastor Dwayne say, if he can get it through you, he can get it to you. And I'll give you lots of examples of that as we go on. But we know that money matters because it's close to our heart, and that's what keeps us balanced, just understanding. And we just have to change that attitude that we have every day from the poverty mentality of I can't afford it. I can't afford it. I can't do it. I can't afford it. I would rather that you help, and I always talk about your neighbors because you're here, so it's your neighbors that need to hear the message. But if you hear your neighbors talking about I can't afford it, you need to look at them and say, what could you afford? What could you do now? I mentioned to you that Paul Milligan talks about work with what's in your hand. I've been out to eat with people and money's telling them what to do. We'll go to a nice restaurant and they'll look at that and they'll just be flushed. Like, how am I going to pay for that? I can't do it. There's no way to do it. What am I going to do? The question is, what can you do? And regardless of where you are in whatever circumstance, let's say your car breaks down. They tell you need a new motor. Well, what can I do? I just had that happen to me last week down at the Honda place. I realized my van's got 300,000 miles on it, but they said I need a new set of rings. You're going to cost $3,000. And I just asked the lady, I said, really? I said, what can I do to get the van out of the shop driving down the road? Well, we just need to change the spark plugs. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, why don't we do that? We'll change the spark plugs and we'll just wait for the rings to go back later. I realize it's inevitable, but at some point you have to evaluate what's it worth to you to have the loss in the short term to have a long-term gain. So we're going to talk about all those different things. The first thing I want to talk about is, as you talk about understanding money, is how to understand wealth. You have to kind of ask your question, what's your definition of wealth? And I'm here to tell you that every one of you is going to have a different answer. So I'm not going to ask you, show a hand. Because wealth to me is health and happiness. Wealth to someone else may be assets. Wealth to someone else may be money or being an overcomer or having retirement available or all the different things that it takes. So you have to decide what is wealth to you individually. Because I realize, when you talk about Jesus owning the cattle on 1,000 hills and the hills, when he started his ministry in today's money, I think the saying is that the wise men brought about $440 million to his parents and said, here you go, raise that kid. So Jesus was never poor. He did tell us that the poor will be with us always. And I think Elaine tonight, she said, I've ministered to homeless people before, and some of them just want to be homeless. So we can't fix everything. And I know we're trying to fix things, but we just have to be a blessing as we go on the way, because people look at everything differently. And so we have to be prepared to accept wherever they are. The Bible says that no one can serve God and mammon, or basically God and money, because you either hate the one and love the other, or you're devoted to one and despise the other. But I'm here to tell you, they can go together. We watched Jesus do it all throughout the word as he went on the way. He ministered to people in benevolence. He provided for people. He always had money. Can you imagine what it would cost? I know some of you have had kids or grandkids and traveled. And I know when I take my crew somewhere, Dr. Morrison will tell you that's, over 20 people. And so when we go out to eat, it's $1,000. I don't care if you go to Chick-fil-A, it costs a lot of money. And Jesus had all those disciples who had people serving them, who traveled with them. They had this whole barrage of people traveling. He had a treasurer watching his money, stealing from him, of course, but watching his money. And they took care of everything as they went. And they never had an issue with having or having not enough. And so I know I've not felt that way my whole life. I'm sure you haven't felt that way your whole life. So we have to be able to be seeking his face. And then, as we know, everything else gets added unto us. And so face to face, just what Pastor Jacob says, is where we have to be, because basically we have to learn how to manage and control our finances so that we can start mastering our own money, what God entrusts us with, what we steward on his behalf. You know, you have to decide, how can I be a servant? Because Jesus served in everything. How can I serve the kingdom in my finances? And that's where this book come about that Pastor Billy wrote, of Making Sense for Making Money for Making a Difference. Because I used to tell my kids when they were growing up, you know, they grumble about stuff. And I said, look, it doesn't matter to me. You have to do everything as unto the Lord. If you do everything as unto the Lord, it's not a job. It's service to the Lord. If you do everything as unto the Lord regarding finances, paying your bills and whatever, you're going to do with excellence, because you're serving the King. Kingdom is now. Our kingdom's right here, right now, and we're the stewards over it. So we have to be doing what we can do. I like to ask people is what really is your definition of money? If you think about it, and I won't ask, I'm good to answering questions that I ask. But money, you know, money's amoral. It's neither good nor bad. It's here. We need it every day. We can't live without it. But, you know, really, it's just the middleman. If you think about it, between a transaction, money's the middleman. It's a representative. When it first came out, they couldn't haul around chickens or corn, or, you know, they used to do the bartering and stuff. And there was just so much to barter. I mean, you can only take so many cows to the grocery store to get what you want in groceries. And so it evolved into having a coin that would represent a certain amount of things. And so what it basically began to represent is a value, and the value was determined, just like it is today, even back then, on something, on some type of commodity. It was back then, it was corn, could have been wheat, could have been different things, but that's what set the bar. Today we have what we call a gold standard that started in the 1800s. And that gold standard is still very equivalent today. If you kind of figure out, and through the book, we'll get into, Billy Epperhart talks about the value of gold regulates the economy today, just as it is when it first started. We don't think about that, because unless you're buying and selling gold or holding gold as an investment or whatever. I mean, how many people go look at the price of gold every day in the market? Even I don't do that. I guess if I was holding gold, I might do that. I know Pastor Billy holds some gold because he talks about it some in his class. But most people, that's just not something they do every day, because it doesn't seem to do the goal. But when you consider the value of the gold on the market today, its value today is very similar to what it was in 1800, just inflated because of the dollars that got inflated in America. Of course, it's a worldwide economy now, and so the gold doesn't fluctuate as much as it used to, because you can't make a run on it like you do at a bank. And there was a period of time, in the 20s and 30s, when there was runs on banks, and banks folded, and the value was different. But money is what we use. How many have had a job? Pretty much everybody in here. Money is what we trade for our time. We work 40 hours, we get a check. So you have money to show the value of the time that you committed to work at the wherever you're working. And so that's the medium of exchange. The employer gave you money for your time. And time is one of those things that we can't get back. So you know that money is valuable. And I know that, I think I mentioned that last week, but when you're given money, it's way easier to give an offering of money that came to you easily than it is for money that you worked really hard for, because you get to a place where you spend all that time. I mean, I can remember when I worked at the refinery, we would go in those big tanks that you see, and we'd be doing maintenance on them, and it stunk, and it was sticky, and it was dark and everything. I've done lots of different types of work in my life, but that was what I considered a hard day's work. But I got paid the same wage per hour that I did when I was driving the truck, the dump truck. And that was way easier. So I always jumped up to volunteer to go drive the truck than I did go to the refinery and work. Now some of those guys liked it because they just hid out in there. But ultimately the job still had to get done. So it represented value. And I know that when I worked in the big tanks, man, I was so glad to get that check. And it would have been hard for me just to give it away. But now when I do, let's say we flip a house or something and we do cash on cash appreciation and I make $10,000 or $20,000, it's not hard to give an offering because I didn't do a lot for the cash that came in. So I do know that we all value the time that we put in a job every day to make a difference. So each person's definition of what money means to them and what kind of value it is to them certainly changes as you go on down the road. But you remember the Good Samaritan story, and I think I shared part of that last time. But Margaret Thatcher, she was one of those that said, no one would remember the Good Samaritan if he only had good intentions. He had money as well. And so he was able to minister with it. And that's what our aim should be on a kingdom perspective, is that we're able to minister with finances for other people. Felix Dennis, his quote, and I always like this, was, I was put on earth to get rich, to collect all the money that already had my name on it, and then give it all away. Boy, that's awesome. And we don't think like that. I mean, how many of y'all think that there's money out there with your name on it? We're so used to getting up and going to work and getting a check that we don't realize the opportunities that are in front of us because we don't recognize them. And that's what Money Mastery will help you do. Begin to see other ways to make an investment or other ways to make a gain that could be used for kingdom finances. It says in Isaiah 45:3, it says, I will give you the treasures of darkness and hidden riches of secret places, that you may know that I, the Lord who calls you by name, is the God of Israel. You know, he has it all. He has it all available to us. All we have to do is find it. And Money Mastery kind of shares what Pastor Billy calls the secret sauce, and that is how to open up some of those opportunities for you, because typically you still have to do stuff. You know, when you get in a point in life where you mastered money and money doesn't master you, and I feel that myself sometimes, but that's a real freedom. You have immense freedom. You're not worried about money. You're not worried about going to the store. You're not really worried about anything because you've done all the Dave Ramsey things. I think there's 2 or 3 on here, and Miss Hoffman's not on here. She taught that class. I used to teach that class. But several of you have stated kind of in your background that you've been through that class. So I know you have emergency fund. I know you have 3 to 6 months of your living expenses in the bank. And so you don't feel the stress of what's going on in America today, where people are having not and are trying to run around and loot and take things from other people. You have the availability of money available to you. So it does bring immense freedom. Money's not telling you what to do. But when you get to that place, you still have to work hard on it every day and continuously resubmit yourself to God's will in your life. Because if you don't, then you get out of balance. The minute that you forget that it's God who gives you the power to get wealth, you get off track. And at that very moment when you get off track, money becomes your master again because it's driving you. It's driving you. So we have to be that face to face. We have to be seeking the Lord, it talks about in Deuteronomy, because he gave you the power to get wealth. And it's not a spiritual thing. It's not hard to get up and put your hands to the plow each and every day. So any of us can do it. I know lots of people that started with absolutely nothing and got to a place where they had, as Greg Moore says, more than enough. You know, it's hard to believe that you can have more than enough. But when you're giving to every good work, because he's blessed you, then you're at a place in your life where you probably have more than enough. Having the ability to do that is a real blessing, I think, to everyone. I think we really want to be thinking about individually, since that's kind of the thought process of the book, but where does your money mastery story begin? I know that I've always had money because I started working when I was 12. I know that's terrible. Actually started a paper out when I was 11. So I've worked all my life, and I started, goodness sakes, in the funeral business back when I was 13, so a long time. And I've worked at several different jobs in between, trying to raise more money for college or more money for kids or more money for medical. I'd take part-time jobs, second jobs, even though I was still working in the funeral business. Because contrary to what people think of these guys that wear suits and drive big cars, we don't make any money in the funeral business. We're just here serving people. So what we talk about in Money Mastery is seed, time, and harvest. And so where I've come out ahead in money over the years is I have a lot of time. You know, after a period of time, for those of you that are on the older model, Dr. Morrison doesn't get this, but, you know, I've lived to the end of a mortgage. I think Redonda and Les built their own house, so they didn't even have a mortgage or had a very small one. But, you know, that's a real freedom to be in a house that's paid for and not to have that to be an issue. So getting to a place where you've put in the time of work gets you to a place where you can be a master of money that's in your own house, and you can begin to live the life that God called you to be, and that is just to have freedom, to walk in grace and mercy to other people, and to love people in whatever situation they're in. I know that when you're out on the street and you see people, you know, when we were at Nicaragua, we'd go up and down the street and there'd be people on the side of the road and they're just asking for money. And so we did just like they did in the Bible. And we said, silver and gold have I none. What such as you have, I can give you. What do you need? How can I help you help yourself? And it was so fun. Daniel's dad, Mark Huffman, and I were there together, and we're both kind of business guys. And so we talked to him about how to get into business in Nicaragua. I mean, there were several things that could be done, but they just live every day in the situation that they're in, and they don't think about what they could do. And so several of them could start businesses. One guy from another town that we met, he had gone and started a tile business. He knew how to do that. And then he taught other people, and he just had several people doing it. One of the things I thought they really could have worked on, and that would have taken a little bit of materials from, I don't know, the city or something, or what, we were in areas that weren't cities, but they didn't have rural water districts. So there was a whole lot of people with no water. There'd be a public pump somewhere in the town, and people would be walking back and forth to do that. It would have took nothing to put in a few water lines and, you know, a faucet at some of those little shacks. Of course, they were shacks with no windows, no roofs, no doors. It's just a different life, but it was amazing to me. They were as happy as they could be. They didn't think a thing about it. They didn't know any difference, regardless of what we were doing to come. And most of them had physical needs, and we would just step in and pray with them. And they had, you know, physical needs as well sometimes. And so we tried to meet their needs where they were. But they were so attentive and so willing to listen to the word that you were able to make a difference to them. And we had to be in a position where we had the money to share with them. So we were able to be benevolent in our giving over there and make some changes for things. But then Mark and I, we were looking for what's a sustainable life change for this area. So we talked with the missionary people about setting up something in their area that would change the economy and give opportunities for work. So we helped them get something started. I'm not sure that I can even understand it, but it's like a garden thing that uses fish, you know, whatever. Some people have heard about those. They talked about doing some of that in America, but I don't think it really ever caught on. But over there, it was easy for them to build the get the materials and build the stuff. And so they can grow stuff year round in areas that are rather desolate, I guess, because when we were there, I mean, there wasn't green anything anywhere, no green, none. They don't have any water. They don't have any way to transport the water. They literally hand dig wells. So it was neat to be able to be there and show them how the kingdom can work in the midst of circumstances that might not seem very well. And so as people beginning to master money in your own lives, each one of us, including me, have circumstances or situations that we thought of. How can I fix this? What can I do to make a change in my life in a certain area that might, where money's talking to me, telling me, oh, I can't do that. I can't do this. I can't do that. I know that it being just the middleman, we've got to be at the place where we can make it work on our behalf, and we can make a change in what happens to what's going on in our lives for our own family, for our grandkids and everything, because we're supposed to leave an inheritance for our grandkids. I know that God doesn't want us to be in a position where we can't do that. And so that's always been important to me, because wealth can make a change. Wealth can be a definition. I would love my grandkids to start their floor be my ceiling. I'd love them to step on my shoulders and go further. I mean, why? I don't want them to suffer where I did, living through 30 years worth of mortgage and stuff like that. I mean, it was like a ball and chain for years and years and years, trying to get beyond where we had a place that we had money to invest. I know that one of the people asked about, is it too late to start investing for retirement? And the answer is no. I don't care how old you are. If you decide, what do I have that I can do, then you just start. And I mean, everything that you do is going to change your perspective in the future. If you don't do anything, then you get nothing out of it. But if you begin to save and put stuff aside, and I know most of the people here have, and are looking for a deeper understanding of what to do with the money, then we have to have some action steps to ensure that what we're serving God, how we're doing it, and how we're mastering money. And so I want to be able to work through, not only what does being the master of your money mean to you. I think would be a good question for you to email back to me, Sarah, Dr. Morrison, if you can put that in the chat. Just as, what does becoming the master of your money mean to you? Because it means something different to everyone. We have to decide how we can establish a covenant here on this earth, and what steps do we need to take? I think we need to ask ourselves that. What steps do we need to take that we're serving God and mastering money? And I think if you just give some thought to that, this next week or so, I do like this is my off work weekend. Of course, it's a snow day, but I have way better, I don't know how to run all this stuff that Mary has on this desk, but I have way better opportunity for technical recording. And so I want to try to meet the every other week of this week, which would be whatever that is. Dr. Morrison, if you'll put that in the chat for the next time, so that we can be covering things that's a little easier to do. And so tonight, that's kind of what I wanted to touch, is understanding what wealth is. The next time we'll get into what he calls his second chapter, and that's God's purpose for wealth. That's a real fun chapter to cover. But what I wanted to show, and that way Ethan would understand, I know that Daniel was here and he's been with me before, but a couple of things, I do want to answer some of these quicker questions. And if there's something on here that triggers you a question, if you'll just send it in there. I had one person says that, is it feasible? Now this is a good question, but I have a little different answer than I used to have. And someone wanted to know if it was feasible to get rid of big student debt in a timely manner. And so, you hear a lot of times, so I do want to touch base on that, because you hear those things come on TV, I'm going to my student debt or do whatever. Right now, with President Biden being in office, I think I wouldn't do anything with my student debt for a period of at least 6 months or a year, other than make my small monthly payment, because they talk about forgiving 100% of that. So why would you want to be in a hurry to pay it off? Because if you borrow money to pay it off, guess what you have? A loan, a real loan somewhere else. Whereas this loan is from the government and they may forgive it because of the situation with COVID. So my initial answer is don't do anything. My long-term answer is pay it out in the small monthly payment forever. I would never pay a student loan off early. If you begin to look at the actual percentage of interest rate on that, that's pretty cheap money. I mean, they loaned you money to go to school and they want you to be successful. And I realize some people took advantage of that, maybe abused that. And if you did, you may need to make some larger payments, but I wouldn't try to accelerate a student loan payment, especially not right now. Something else this is what they asked, is it too late to make headway with the retirement account? And I'm going to say no, because regardless of what age you are, I mean, I'm going to be real honest with you and tell you, I don't have one. I don't have 401k, I don't have retirement, I don't have anything. What I am fully invested in business. Now I have 15 of those and I have equity. So I'm sitting on my retirement account every day that I go to work, which is a little different perspective than, because then let's talk about percentages of return. So that's called ROI, rate of return, rate of investment, return on investment, excuse me, Daniel will correct me. But the ROI on my business annually is greater than most people's retirement accounts. So by paying down that, it's like paying off a credit card. As I pay down that equity, just like on your home loan, eventually I'll get to the end of the debt for the acquisition and I'll have well more than I'd ever make in retirement. So everybody's position is different. So we have to look at how we do it different. Someone asked is how do I grow money in a safe fashion, in a moderate, safe fashion? And you know, it depends. Before you talk to somebody about investing money, you need to have a conversation. So everybody has a risk tolerance, okay? So I manage 2 different trust funds, well, 3, but on 2 for 2 individuals. And they have different risk tolerance. One of them that I interviewed, no matter what, now this sounds, and I realize it's impossible, so I don't tell everybody the whole story, but they don't want to lose a dime. They can't lose a dime of their money. Okay, so that means you're in federal treasury notes and those kind of things that are federally insured. Well, everything's only even federally insured if the government continues. And I mean, last year or 2, we've kind of wondered if the government was going to continue. And with them printing all of this stimulus money again through COVID relief, I don't know when we'll get into a hyperinflation rate, so I can't tell you if the government will continue. So to me, you have to manage the market just as Jesus managed things on the way. So you really got to be looking at things as we go every day, rather than hoping that you can jump one way or jump another way. Because in the last days that we're in, there's going to be no gray area. It's going to be a little more black and white. But one of the safest ways to do things, and I'm not a big recommender of that, is grow money with interest. So there's something called the rule of 72. So what I want to help people that are looking for interest to understand is, what are you looking for? So if you're younger, you could go a longer period of time, which means you could have a lower rate of interest and your money would still grow the same in a long period of time. But the rule of 72 is whatever the interest rate you have, if you divided that into 72, that's the length of time for your money to double. So for instance, if I had $10 and I invested it at 9%, makes sense? 72 divided by 9 is 8. Simple math. In 8 years, I would have $20. So if you begin to understand how the interest works, that's through compounding, you can double your money in a shorter period of time. So if you were to get, let's say, 10 or 12% interest, then in 5 or 6 years, your money could double. So, but to get to that rate, when you go to the bank today, what do you get offered? Less than 1%. So to get to a 10 to 12%, you're going to have to be in the market in bond funds or consolidated funds. And so there's a whole session we'll have on the market to understand. But like on my trust funds that I manage, one of them is more conservative. They don't want to have a loss. And in the other one, I did get 12.5% this year. They're also very conservative, but they didn't mind having some international funds. And I think some of my international funds right now are paying about 25%. So you have to look at what's going to work best based on your individual goals. And then the same individual asked, well, if they had some money, what are other ways to earn passive income besides real estate? And I think I mentioned some of those last time, but I'll mention them again today. There's really only so many ways to earn money. You're going to have a job, or you're going to earn money on rents from real estate, or you're going to earn money from interest, or you're going to have a business. And I'm not saying self-employed. You have a business that works when you're not there. It pays you. Or you're going to have royalties. You write a book, intellectual property, do music. Those are all passive income sources. So when I look at those, I think, okay, I could do 4 out of 5 of them because I have a job, I have a business, I can do interest from investments, and I could do rents from real estate. I do all of those different things. So to me, I feel like it's a pretty safe way to grow income because it's so diversified. I'm not in any one of those, I'm in 4 of those. And so I think there's opportunities to do all of those things. I never wrote a book or sung any songs that people would listen to, so I don't think I'll ever get royalties. But I do think that all of the others are easy to get into, and we can show you how to do that here. I just know we have to get beyond ourselves. I can't do what I've done in the time that I've done it by wages. When I was started to work when I was 12, I didn't get into making money work for me until I was 32. I went a long time working jobs, spending money, working jobs, spending money, because everything costs money. I mean, I don't care what you do, it costs money. And I had to get to where I started a business before I began to be then changed. Now, I did have some interest accounts, but I think I told you last week it was Andrew Womack that said savings was for suckers. The interest has never paid a lot of money except in the 80s. Elaine, you remember? 15, 17%. Yeah, whew, that was great. And that's when I realized, and that was hyperinflation. We don't want to go there, but we need a moderate rate of interest. We do. We need a moderate rate of interest. And I know the government manages that, so I don't know why they don't let us get to a place that's successful for everybody. But it wasn't until the 86th time that I realized, oh, I can make money with interest. So then I put a bunch of money in and made a bunch of money with just CDs. I mean, I didn't even understand the market at that time. There's no telling what the market was at that hyperinflation time. If you had a 401k in the 80s, you might have seen some real growth. But if you had a 401k in, what was it, 2008, you might have seen some real loss. So I know that a lot of people lost money in the market when that happened, but really you didn't lose money unless you sold out of the market. I know my brother, he was just flabbergasted. Half of the value of his retirement fund dropped when the market dropped. And he called me up and says, what do I do? What do I do? And I said, nothing. Well, I got to sell. I got to get out. No. You didn't get in when the market was that low. You got in when the market was higher. the market will change again. I talked to him last year and he's like, I said, well, you never did tell me how that worked for you. You stayed in, where are you at? Oh, he said, I got more than I've ever had. I said, oh, so it's gone all the way back up, got you all your loss and more. He said, yeah. I said, aren't you glad you didn't sell? Because literally the only people that lost when the market fluctuated down are the ones that got out of the market. And so even on the little trust funds that I try to get, 10 or 12% on, that goes up and down, but it's not enough. They're in bond funds. They're a little more stable. But honestly, what I think is stable might not be stable tomorrow. Those municipal bond funds, what if the municipalities like California had some that went bad? Then you'd be a real loss because you'd even lose on a bond fund, which I would have said is not possible, but it is. So another question that someone had, and I think the understanding, yes. Okay, somebody asked about basically the Money Mastery Life Group, and they're Dave Ramsey graduates. They've studied Jim Baker. I love him. He talks about money and kingdom principles as well, super guy. But what some of the other areas, if they wanted to enter into building wealth in real estate or business ownership, and the difference between like the Dave Ramsey program and Jim Baker and this life group, pretty simple. And Daniel's a good testimonial for me. I'm here to help you. So this is a life group. You get to ask questions whenever you want, and we can give you real-time answers. So I just want you to know from this perspective on my point, I'm committed to do personal coaching, and we'll help you do anything individually that you want to do. I love running numbers on properties and seeing what's going to work. And I love people growing in that. I'm not picking on you, Daniel, but Daniel brought I think it was a 20-door unit up the other day, and I ran the numbers and he ran the numbers, and that kid is awesome. He's on here tonight. We were within 100 grand on being the exact same number. So I'm really proud of him. But one of the other things, how do I find the best deals in real estate in my local area? And I think I've explained that before, but I did want to touch base that on again. And that is, you got to become committed. I've bought some of the best real estate deals in my time in Texas. I love Texas because, no offense, Redonda, but it's not an abstract state, and you don't have to wait, that 60 days to close on something. I mean, I have walked into deals and said, I have cash I can close in 10 days. And Billy Epperhart says it all the time. But you know what? They'll take my contract first. I have cash, I'll close in 10 days. And because all they have to do is go get title insurance. It doesn't take anything to buy a property in Texas. So my first point behind that is you have to be committed. And not only do you have to be committed to find a good deal, you have to be ready, money in hand, ready to go. So really what you have to decide on real estate deals is, what am I looking for? And then begin to start looking for those deals. Now, I want you to know that I can almost drive up by a house. I know Billy will tell you he can do this. And before he walks in from outside, he can tell you what he should have to pay for that house without going in the house. And so just by doing some market research, you know what the market is. And we're going to get into this because real estate's a big portion of easy ways to invest. I realize it sounds terrible, like work, and it is work. But remember, I just told you about understanding wealth. The minute you understand that you've mastered your own money, it's still work every day to keep at that level. And so once you understand what you're looking for, then you're ready to look for it. And then you have to have a good realtor. You got to find a realtor who is also, this sounds terrible, but is an investor in real estate, not somebody that just sells stuff. So if you have a realtor who's an investor, then you can tell them, this is the deals I'm looking for and I'm willing to close cash in 10 days. And they'll throw you stuff because they're looking at everything. We have a realtor in Hugo. Redonda know who it is. I won't say who that is since we're on I do record this so people will see. But that realtor gets all the good deals because, people are trying to sell. They're in a hurry. They're stressed. they've got to get out of a property, and they'll call that realtor, and he'll know right away they're selling it under value, and he'll pick it up. And I understand your frustration as trying to get into a market when you see that happening all the time. You hear about the sale before you ever saw it was for sale. So it's really a personal thing. You got to get with the realtor, and you got to let them know, hey, I'm trying to build a portfolio, a rental portfolio, and I'm not trying to take everything in this town, but I need about 6. So help me find 6. And I'm ready to buy 6 places. And you'll be amazed, they'll help you buy 6 because they probably already own 30. Fact is, they may sell you some of theirs. Now, if they start to offer you stuff, call me, we'll run the numbers. Because sometimes they know a little bit too much about the numbers from one side, and they're trying to get you on the other side. You're going to learn when we talk about real estate, you make money when you buy, not when you sell. And so buying right is a really big deal. And then there was a question somebody had about 401ks, retirement options, things like that. And that's something that where you have to review that risk tolerance again and begin to understand what the options are. One of the things I mentioned to us last week, I brought up Chad Franson, and then I thought Derek Hines. I don't know why I didn't think about Derek, but I checked with him too, and he's willing to come on here and give us a rundown. They're what we call CFPs. They're certified financial planners, and they're willing to come in when we get to that chapter and go right through all the pros and cons and all the things to look for. Derek and Chad are both Christian men that I know. Chad is with Wealth Builders with Billy Epperhart. They started a group just for wealth builders. And then Derek is in Victory. He's a Victory guy there in Durant, super guy. And so they're going to help you understand the difference between a broker, think with me, real estate broker, financial broker. They're selling stuff for you. And you look at those guys and they're talking to you and you wonder, he's driving a Mercedes and I'm still driving my Ford truck. Remember that a broker is making commissions on selling stuff to you. Now there's a room for all of these things and there's certainly a difference, but there are certified financial planners that are fiduciaries. In other words, they're working for you for a different purpose. And Chad Franson, the guy with Wealth Builders, he's one of those kind of guys. I love talking to him because he's looking out for you as an investor for the kingdom. So he has the same mindset that we do as kingdom investors. It's one of those things that Billy does is what I call philanthrobesting. I know Dr. Morrison understands that. That's where you're using money as an investment for the kingdom. And we had somebody ask us kind of about that. But that's where you would actually either create a business that pays to the church, or you would make an investment and the church or whichever, wherever you were giving, whatever 501c3 would be the beneficiary of your interest, your gift, your growth. So instead of giving your money away as a benevolence, you're investing your money and they're getting the growth on the money and you still own the money. So if you have, $10 million and need a write-off, we need $150,000 a year to run the Christian school in Durant. And so we'd be happy to take your little bit of interest and give you a write-off and you still keep your $10 million. And by that, you would still be making money because I know you could make 10 or 12% on your $10 million, which is way more than what we need to run the school. I just throw that in for you, Dr. Morrison. Anyway, somebody asked, how do you start when you have no money to start with? And I love this question. Ashley Teredez has a book. I probably have it somewhere, but it is, it's not like Trash to Treasure, but it's called Practical Prosperity. And in his book, he teaches people about what to do to get the money to start. Just like Dave Ramsey talks about that you got to have an emergency fund, $1,000, you got to start there no matter what. Ashley teaches you just to go to the attic, go to the garage. And I'm amazed with this Craigslist and selling stuff on Amazon. And Dr. Morrison does that for me because I don't like to do it. but I'll give her stuff and she'll sell it in a day or two for more money than I would have ever thought. And people drive up and hand her cash. That's the darndest thing. So if you're trying to raise a stake to start an investment, you need to look inward first. What is laying around this house that I don't need, or this attic, or this garage? You may have a treasure somewhere in the house that could be sold for more money than you ever needed to start an investment. But I thought that was a really neat thing. Something else somebody asked was, could they use their emergency fund to get started? Now, I'm going to say yes and no. I'm going to say no if that $1,000 emergency fund that you kind of get with Dave Ramsey is your only emergency fund. I'm going to say yes if it's just money in the bank and you have plenty of other money in the bank. What most people don't understand, because Dave Ramsey doesn't talk about it, if you've got 3 to 6 months of working capital in the bank, that is your emergency fund. I mean, that's way more than your emergency fund. So there's no reason to leave $1,000 sitting in a bank that's not growing if you can invest it to start something else, to grow something else. So there is something, in my son-in-law's notorious for this, something called lazy money. So he's always after me. He says, you got any lazy money just laying around? And he wants to put it into an investment somewhere. And we've actually made several, because, you know, I don't invest in anything if somebody brings a great idea. So don't have lazy money. You could do, and this sounds terrible, and I've done this a time or two. Well, I have 2 or 3 of them right now. There's something called a Heloc. That's a home equity line of credit. So that's a great way to do that. That's not a second mortgage on a paid off property. The bank would appraise your property, figure out the equity. They'll give you up to 80% of the equity, just the equity, on a home equity line of credit. So if you were trying to do buying real estate and try to do the cash and close in 10 days, you might have to have what they call a Heloc established already. It doesn't cost you anything to do that. So let's just say you had a $100,000 property paid off. You could have a Heloc of $80,000. I know it sounds scary, but I know you're all very responsible. The bank will hand you a checkbook for $80,000. I bought property that way. And then when I flip the property out, I take the Heloc off. It's not rocket science, but it is a simple way to have cash available to make an investment if you're doing a buy and flip or in what I call an ARV, and you're buying a house appraised at the repair value. So let's say you go out and find a house. Redonda is my best example of that, because she has less, and less can fix anything. So let's say they went out and bought a house that was undervalued, that needed a new bathroom and kitchen. And then Redonda got less out there to do the new bathroom and kitchen. And you bought the house undervalued, and after the new bathroom and kitchen's done, you get the house reappraised, and you basically flip out. You then get let's say you're going to make it a rental, or you're just going to sell it. And you sell it for more than what you spent on the Heloc and all the repairs, because the now repaired value, its 80% is more than you have in it. And so I've done 2 or 3 of those. I actually held on to them because I didn't have much money in them, and the rents are real good. So you have to kind of decide. Remember, we'll do personal coaching. I'll walk you through understanding what is the best fit for you at some time. But understanding kingdom business is something that we have to work on. Now, Dr. Morrison's telling me I'm out of time, and man, it goes fast. So I gave a couple questions are on the chat, right? If you can talk, Dr. Morrison, where we can hear you.
Yeah, so no one has sent formal questions in. Everyone was just kind of participating. I did get a couple book orders though, and we'll get those books sent, and then send me your mailing address, and we'll get them mailed, since most of us are kind of everywhere.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, anybody that